My parents said, "We wish we'd stopped at 2 kids in front of me," so I walked out with nothing and silently became the billionaire funding my siblings' rival company. Take a second to show us some love by subscribing. And let us know where you're listening from. It warms our hearts to see our global family. I still remember the exact temperature of that July evening, 83 degrees, when my mother served her famous honey-glazed salmon. My siblings, Marcus and Kendra, were celebrating their latest business venture, some tech startup they'd been bragging about for months. I'd driven 4 hours from Atlanta to our family home in Charlotte for this dinner, wearing the clearance dress I'd bought specifically for tonight. "Raina, pass the rolls," my father said without looking at me. That should have been my first warning. 26 years on this earth, and Leonard Hayes had perfected the art of looking through me like I was furniture. My mother, Diane, was pouring champagne for Marcus and Kendra, her face glowing with pride I'd never seen directed at me. To brilliant minds and Hayes innovations. Marcus raised his glass. He was 32, with our father's sharp features and my mother's confidence. Kendra, 29, clinked her glass against his, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light. I'd given her that bracelet 3 Christmases ago, back when I stupidly believed sisterhood meant something in this family. "Mom, Dad, we've secured $15 million in funding," Kendra announced. "The investors loved our AI platform pitch." I smiled, trying to participate. "That's amazing. I remember when you first." "Nobody asked you, Raina," my mother cut me off, her voice sharp as January wind. "Adults are talking." The salmon turned to ash in my mouth. I was 26, not 12. Marcus smirked into his wine glass. Then my father said the words that detonated my entire world. "Sometimes I think we should have stopped at 2 kids. Life would have been so much simpler." My mother nodded. "So much cheaper too." The chandelier crystals seemed to freeze mid-sparkle. I heard every sound with painful clarity, Marcus's fork scraping his plate, Kendra's cruel little laugh, my mother's satisfied sigh. My father continued cutting his salmon like he'd just commented on the weather, not eviscerated his youngest daughter at the dinner table. "Excuse me." My voice came out steadier than I felt. My hands were shaking underneath the table, nails digging into my palms hard enough to leave crescents. "Oh, don't be dramatic, Raina," Kendra rolled her eyes. "You know what they mean. Marcus and I are building empires. You're still working at that little nonprofit, barely making $42,000 a year." She said it like my salary was a personal insult to her designer lifestyle. I'd spent 3 years at Atlanta Community Relief, helping families avoid homelessness. Last month, I'd negotiated housing for 17 families. But in this dining room, lined with my siblings' achievement plaques and conspicuously absent of anything bearing my name, that work was worthless. "Your sister has a point," my mother said, refilling only Marcus and Kendra's glasses. The champagne bottle stood between us like a barrier. "We invested everything in Marcus's MBA, Kendra's connections. You got your state school degree and decided to play savior to strangers." "I help people," I whispered. "You waste potential," my father corrected. "Do you know what we could have done with the money we spent raising you? Marcus needed capital 3 years ago. We couldn't help because we were still paying off your college loans." That was a lie. I'd taken federal loans, worked 2 jobs through college. They'd paid nothing. "I never asked you for." "Everything's always about you," Marcus interrupted, annoyance flashing across his face. "Can we please celebrate our success without your victim complex ruining dinner?" Something crystallized inside me then, cold, clear, and absolutely final. I'd spent 26 years trying to earn love from people who saw me as a budgetary mistake. Every birthday where they'd forgotten the cake, every graduation they'd missed, every accomplishment I'd downplayed to make them comfortable suddenly made horrifying sense. I wasn't family. I was the remainder they couldn't quite zero out. I stood up slowly, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. My father had refinished himself last spring. You know what? You're absolutely right. My mother's eyes narrowed suspiciously. About what? You should have stopped at 2 kids. I pulled off the pearl necklace she'd given me, her only gift in 3 years, and placed it beside my untouched plate. Consider this your refund on the 3rd child investment. Raina, sit down, my father commanded, but I was already walking toward the foyer. You're being childish. No, Leonard. I'm being done. First time I'd called him by his name. It felt revolutionary. I'm done begging for scraps of affection. Done pretending I'm part of this family when clearly, I'm just an expensive mistake you remind me about. Kendra laughed. Where are you going to go? Back to your studio apartment in that sketchy Atlanta neighborhood? She meant the apartment I'd moved into at 19, working 70-hour weeks to afford the $800 rent. The place I'd made home despite having no family help, no safety net. Yeah, exactly there. To my life. The one I built without any of you. Marcus stood up now, his expression shifting to something uglier. You walk out this door, don't come crawling back when you need money. I wouldn't crawl back if I was on fire and you had water, I said. I grabbed my keys from the entry table, my hand surprisingly steady. What they didn't know, what nobody knew, was that 3 months ago, everything had changed. My childhood friend Deshaun Miller, now a Silicon Valley venture capitalist, had tracked me down with an offer that sounded insane. Raina, you remember that algorithm you built senior year? He'd asked over coffee at Octane in Atlanta. The one predicting housing crisis patterns. I'd almost forgotten about it, a project I'd created for my economics capstone, analyzing data points to predict which neighborhoods would face housing instability. My professor had called it promising but impractical. I'd gotten a B+. Deshaun, that was 4 years ago. It's revolutionary now, he'd said, sliding a folder across the table. I showed it to some people. They want to develop it into a full platform. Raina, this could predict economic displacement patterns 6 months in advance. Cities could intervene before families lose homes. The contract he'd brought offered me 60% ownership, with his firm handling development costs. Why 60%? I'd asked. Because it's your vision. Your brilliance. He'd smiled, the same smile from when we were kids trading comic books. I'm just the money guy. I'd signed that contract sitting in my cramped apartment, never telling my family because they'd proven time and time again they didn't care about my accomplishments. Now our beta platform, EconoGuard, had 12 cities interested. And yesterday, Deshaun had called with news that made my hands shake. We've got a buyer interested. 50 million, Raina. Your cut would be 30 million. I'd told him to wait. Now, walking away from my parents' house, I called him back. Deshaun. Accept the offer. My phone buzzed constantly that October morning, but I was ignoring it. The penthouse I'd rented in Atlanta's Buckhead neighborhood had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. $30 million, minus taxes, had left me with $19 million. I'd bought myself time to think, plan, and disappear from the family that never wanted me. My lawyer, Simone Rodriguez, had made everything airtight. Shell companies, NDAs, invisible ownership structures. You sure about staying anonymous? She'd asked during our first meeting in her Midtown office. Completely. I'd learned that lesson well. My family only valued what benefited them. They'd never know I was now wealthier than their wildest dreams. I'd blocked my parents' numbers, my siblings too. Marcus had called twice that first week, probably needing a favor. Kendra texted once, guess you're really playing the drama queen. I deleted it without responding. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. Deshaun. Raina, you need to see this. He'd sent a link to TechCrunch. The headline made my coffee cup freeze halfway to my lips. Hayes Innovations secures $30 million Series B funding for AI urban development platform. My siblings' company. The description made my blood run cold, using artificial intelligence to predict urban housing trends and optimize real estate investment opportunities. They'd stolen my concept. Not exactly, the application was inverted, but the core algorithm structure was identical to what I'd shown Kendra 2 years ago during one Christmas visit when I'd stupidly thought she'd care about my work. I'd walked her through my housing crisis prediction model, hoping for sisterly connection. She'd stolen it. Twisted it. Used it to help investors profit from the same displacement patterns I'd wanted to prevent. Deshawn, I said calmly, I need you to schedule a meeting. Deshawn arrived at my penthouse within the hour, carrying his laptop and that focused expression I'd learned meant business. We sat at my marble dining table, a ridiculous purchase I'd made purely because teenage me had dreamed of eating somewhere that wasn't hand-me-down furniture. Tell me everything, I said. He pulled up files. Hayes Innovations platform, Urban Predict AI, launched 2 weeks ago. They've got contracts with 3 real estate investment firms. The algorithm identifies neighborhoods about to undergo economic stress, allowing investors to buy properties cheap before displacement happens, then flip them for profit once the area gentrifies. My algorithm. My 4 years of research. Perverted into a gentrification machine. How did they build it so fast? I asked, though I already knew. They didn't. Deshawn's jaw tightened. Look at this code structure. He showed me screenshots that made my stomach turn. My variable names. My notation style. They'd dressed it up, added fancy interfaces, but the skeleton was mine. Your sister had access to your research. I showed her during Christmas 2 years ago, I admitted. I wanted her to understand why housing advocacy mattered to me. I was an idiot. You were hopeful. That's different. Deshawn closed his laptop. Here's what I'm thinking. We don't just compete with them. We destroy them. I leaned forward. I'm listening. We launch EconoGuard publicly. Partner with city governments, nonprofits, housing advocates. Make it free for municipalities. Every city they're trying to sell Urban Predict AI to, we offer something better that actually helps communities instead of exploiting them. They'll figure out I'm behind it eventually, I said. Not if we're smart. Deshawn smiled. We keep you as a silent partner. I'm the face. We build something so successful, so ethically superior, that we don't just beat Hayes Innovations, we make their entire business model look predatory. 6 months flew by in a blur of 18-hour days, strategy meetings, and cold, focused fury. We assembled a team of 12 developers, all brilliant, all hungry to build something meaningful. I'd sit in our office in Atlanta's tech corridor, analyzing code, refining algorithms, while Deshawn handled investor relations and public presentations. Our lead developer, Jasmine Lawrence, had left a 6-figure job at Google to join us. What you're building matters, she'd said during her interview. I'm tired of making rich people richer. Let's actually help communities. By March, EconoGuard had contracts with 7 cities: Detroit, Baltimore, Philadelphia, Oakland, Cleveland, Memphis, and Birmingham. We'd proven our platform could predict housing instability with 87% accuracy, giving social services and housing authorities time to intervene with rental assistance, legal aid, and community resources. Meanwhile, Hayes Innovations was faltering. Their model was too obviously exploitative. News articles had started questioning the ethics of an AI platform that essentially helped investors profit from poverty. Marcus and Kendra were doing damage control, but you can't polish a fundamentally rotten concept. My phone rang. Unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. Raina. My mother's voice, tentative in a way I'd never heard. We need to talk about your trust fund. Trust fund. The laugh that escaped me was sharp enough to cut glass. I don't have a trust fund, Diane. Your father and I established one when you were born. 25,000. You can access it at 27. She paused. Your birthday's next month. $25,000 they'd never mentioned. Probably they'd hoped I'd forgotten, planned to absorb it back somehow. Keep it, I said. I don't need your money. Raina, please. I hung up. Jasmine looked up from her monitor. Family. Genetic strangers, I corrected. April brought unexpected complications. I was reviewing contracts in my office, real office now, with my name Raina Hayes on documents I actually signed, when Deshawn burst in looking uncharacteristically shaken. We have a problem. Hayes Innovations just hired Marcus Lawrence. Jasmine's older brother. Former Facebook architect. One of the most brilliant minds in AI development. How? I asked. $60,000 signing bonus, $300,000 salary, equity points. Deshawn's expression was grim. They're restructuring their entire platform. Marcus will make Urban Predict AI actually work correctly. I called Jasmine immediately. She appeared in my doorway 5 minutes later. I heard. My brother called me this morning, all excited about his new job. Her face was conflicted. Raina, I didn't know they were actively targeting him because of me. This isn't your fault, I said firmly. But we need to pivot. If they fix their platform's technical problems, they become legitimate competition. What I didn't say, they'd become legitimate competition using my stolen work, refined by the brother of my lead developer. The irony was suffocating. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my penthouse windows, watching Atlanta's lights blur through unexpected tears. I'd built something good. Something that mattered. And my family was trying to corrupt it, profit from it, destroy it. My phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Raina, it's Marcus. We need to talk about what you're doing. My brother. Finally noticing I existed, now that I was competition. I typed back, I have nothing to say to you. Mom and Dad are worried. You disappeared, now you're funding some company competing with us. So they'd figured it out. Somehow, despite all our precautions, they'd connected the dots. I'm not discussing this. You're being vindictive. We're family. I stared at that word, family, like it was written in a foreign language. They showed up at my office 3 days later. I watched from my window as Marcus, Kendra, and both parents emerged from a black Mercedes in our parking garage. Security called up, Ms. Hayes, you have visitors claiming to be family. Send them up, I said. Might as well end this. They entered my corner office like invaders assessing territory. My mother's eyes widened at the space, modern furniture, city views, the success I'd built without them. My father's face hardened with something that looked like anger but might have been jealousy. So this is where our algorithm ended up, Kendra said, poison sweet. Your algorithm. I stayed seated, refusing to give them the power of making me stand. The one I showed you 2 Christmases ago. The one you told me was cute but impractical. Marcus stepped forward. We improved it. Made it commercially viable. You perverted it into a gentrification tool. I met his eyes. I built that algorithm to help communities. You twisted it to exploit them. Oh, please. Kendra's laugh was cruel. You're just mad we actually made something of your little charity project. While you were playing saint in Atlanta, we were building a real business. My father finally spoke, his voice carrying that authoritative tone that used to make me shrink. Raina, this vendetta needs to stop. You're hurting your siblings' company out of spite. I'm running a business, I corrected. One that's beating yours in every metric that matters. 7 cities to your 3. Better accuracy. Actual community impact. The only thing I'm hurting is your profit margin built on other people's displacement. My mother's face softened artificially. Sweetheart, come home. Let's talk about this properly. You're still family, no matter what was said that night. That night, I interrupted, you told me you wished I'd never been born. Those weren't heated words, Diane. That was truth you finally admitted. Silence crashed through the office. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Even Kendra looked away. My father's expression hardened further, confirming everything I needed to know. We never said that, my mother tried, but her voice wavered. We should have stopped at 2 kids. Life would have been simpler, cheaper. Your exact words. I stood now, walking to my window. And you know what? You were right. You should have stopped. Because the daughter you got wasn't the one you wanted. I was never going to be Marcus's business brilliance or Kendra's social connections. I was always going to care about people more than profit. And in your world, that made me worthless. You're twisting things, Kendra snapped. Am I? I turned to face them. Name one accomplishment of mine you celebrated. 1. The silence was damning. I graduated summa cum laude. You didn't come to the ceremony. I won the state economics competition. You forgot. I got my job at Community Relief, was featured in Atlanta magazine for housing advocacy work. You never read the article. My voice didn't shake. I was past hurt now, into something colder and clearer. But Marcus gets a C+ in microeconomics, you throw a party. Kendra makes a failed jewelry line, you front $30,000. The inequality was so normalized I didn't even see it until that dinner. You always were overdramatic, my father said dismissively. And you always were emotionally vacant, I shot back. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to leave my office. You're going to stop contacting me. And you're going to watch as EconoGuard becomes the industry standard while Hayes Innovations collapses under the weight of its own unethical foundation. You can't possibly compete with us, Marcus said, but uncertainty crept into his voice. We have Marcus Lawrence now, serious investors, established clients. I have $19 million and absolute conviction that what I'm building matters more than your profit margins, I interrupted. Test me. The next 6 months became warfare. Hayes Innovations hired aggressively, poaching 3 of our developers with massive salary offers. They launched a PR campaign painting EconoGuard as naive idealism that ignores market realities. Marcus Lawrence rebuilt their platform into something technically impressive, even if ethically bankrupt. But we fought smarter. Deshaun secured partnerships with 15 more cities. I testified before Atlanta's City Council about housing displacement, my algorithms providing data that resulted in new tenant protection laws. The media loved the narrative, anonymous tech philanthropist versus family dynasty. What my family didn't know, I'd been buying shares of their company through shell corporations. Small amounts, different entities, nothing traceable. By August, I owned 11% of Hayes Innovations. Not enough for control, but enough to attend board meetings as a silent investor. The September board meeting was held in Charlotte, ironically just 4 miles from my childhood home. I attended via proxy, listening through my lawyer Simone's earpiece as my father presented quarterly results. Revenue down 18%. Client retention at 62%. The EconoGuard platform has fundamentally disrupted our market position. His voice carried frustration I'd heard 1,000 times growing up, usually directed at me for some perceived failure. The problem, Kendra added, is they're giving their platform away. We can't compete with free. Then don't, a board member suggested. Pivot your model. Find a different application for the technology. Marcus's voice came through tense. The technology is specifically designed for urban development prediction. There's no easy pivot. I smiled in my Atlanta office, listening to my family's empire crack. Simone texted me, they're discussing selling. Potential buyers circling. Perfect. I'd been waiting for this. Deshawn, I called into my office. Make the call. It's time. He grinned. You're sure? Completely. 3 weeks later, Hayes Innovations received an acquisition offer from Meridian Capital Group, a private equity firm with deep pockets and interest in urban development technology. The offer, $45 million for full company acquisition. My parents were ecstatic. Marcus and Kendra hesitated. Selling meant admitting defeat, but $45 million split among stakeholders meant they'd walk away with enough to start fresh. The board pushed for acceptance. What none of them knew, Meridian Capital Group was my creation. My money, filtered through layers of legal entities, designed for exactly this moment. The acquisition closed on October 15th. I watched the contracts finalize from Simone's office, champagne untouched on her desk. You sure you want to do this next part? She asked. Positive. The following Monday, Hayes Innovations employees arrived to find new management. Deshawn stood in the lobby as their new CEO, announcement boards displaying the merger. Hayes Innovations was now a subsidiary of EconoGuard, being restructured into Ethical Urban Development Consulting. Marcus called my phone 12 times that morning. I finally answered the 13th. What did you do? His voice shook with rage. I bought your company, I said simply. Well, technically Meridian Capital did, but since I own Meridian Capital, same result. Silence. Then, that's not possible. You're a nonprofit worker. I corrected. Past tense. Turns out that, cute but impractical, algorithm I showed Kendra was worth $50 million when developed ethically. I sold it, invested wisely, and built something you tried to corrupt. Raina, my mother's voice now, she'd grabbed the phone. Please, we can work this out. We really can't, I said. You have two choices. Marcus and Kendra can stay on as employees under Deshawn's management, helping transform the company into something that actually helps communities. Or they can leave with their acquisition payout and I never hear from them again. You're destroying us out of revenge, my father's voice, background. No, Leonard. I'm correcting you. There's a difference. 6 months later, I stood in Detroit at the opening ceremony for the Hayes Community Center, funded entirely by my foundation, named ironically after the family that never wanted me. The center would provide free housing counseling, legal aid, and resources for families facing displacement, powered by EconoGuard's prediction algorithms. Mayor Chen gave a speech about innovation serving humanity. Deshawn, now running both companies, outlined our expansion into 12 new cities. Jasmine demonstrated the updated platform, her brother Marcus Lawrence now working alongside her, having quit Hayes Innovations in disgust once he learned how they'd stolen my original work. My family wasn't there, of course. Marcus and Kendra had taken their money and left. Last I heard, they were in California trying to launch another startup, this time without stolen algorithms. My parents had moved to Florida, retired, still unable to comprehend how their mistake, third child had systematically dismantled and rebuilt their legacy. I'd thought winning would feel triumphant. Instead, it felt quiet. Peaceful. That night, back in Atlanta, I sat in my penthouse with the people who'd become my real family, Deshawn, Jasmine, Simone, my team of brilliant developers who believed in building instead of exploiting. We toasted to the future, to communities saved, to justice that looked like prevention instead of revenge. My phone buzzed. Email from an unknown address. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Raina, it's your mother. We saw the news about the community center. Your father and I want you to know, we're sorry. We were wrong about you. Always were. If you're ever willing to talk. I deleted it without finishing. Some bridges, once burned, weren't meant to be rebuilt. Everything okay? Deshawn asked. I smiled, genuine this time. Everything's perfect. Outside my windows, Atlanta glowed with possibility. I'd walked away from family with nothing and built an empire on my own terms. Not an empire of money, though I had that now, but an empire of impact. Of communities protected, families housed, algorithms that serve people instead of profit margins. They'd wished they'd stopped at 2 kids. Turns out, the 3rd kid was the one who mattered most. I was done being their mistake. I was too busy being my own masterpiece.